Dear listeners, Assalamu alaikum, a very good evening and welcome to Friday Night Fusion, the new sound of Great Britain, broadcasting live and interactive on 93.5 FM, Unity FM across Birmingham and surrounding areas, both nationally and internationally on www.unityfm.net. First things first, the date is of course Friday the 29th of June 2012, and as always this promises to be 2 hours full of education, entertainment, information and much more. So I sincerely hope that you can stay with us throughout the duration of the programme, full of lively discussions and of course interesting debates, giving you the very latest in local, national and even international news. If there's a specific topic that you would like to hear us discuss or debate on this programme, a specific group of guests that you'd like to see on this programme, please do not hesitate to contact us. We'll be more than happy to take your suggestions and ideas on board. The email address of course being studio@unityfm.net with Friday Night Fusion in the subject line of your email. Now, an issue that has propped up this week once again is that of the niqab. Those of you who have been following the news will of course recall the story of the mother that was turned away from her son's college because she was wearing a niqab. They said that she should be able to show her face at all times. Indeed, all visitors and students at the college should show their face at all times for security purposes. But was this the right decision for the college to take? Who was in the right, who was in the wrong, or are both parties to blame? This is the topic that we'll be exploring for the next half an hour or so on the programme. I'm happy to say that joining me here on my panel I have Mr. Phillip Holobone, Conservative Member of Parliament for the Kettering constituency. Mr. Holobone, a very good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
And I also have Sister Tasneema Litt, who herself is a campaigner in favour of the niqab. She's also appeared on various other programmes as well, including the One Show. Sister Tasneema, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for being with us.
Wa alaikum salam.
If I could start off with yourself, Mr. Holobone, when you heard about this story, a mother being turned away from her son's college at the time of a parents' evening of some sort, who do you think was in the right? Was it the college or was it the mother?
Oh, the college was in the right, 100%.
Now, when it comes down to it, don't you think that the college should have shown some sort of compromise towards this lady in respecting her religious beliefs? Because after all, I suppose after hearing the mother give various interviews on other stations, she said that she would have been fine with showing her face to a female member of staff or a female member of security so that she could be identified and then put her niqab back on. Shouldn't the college have shown a bit of compromise and a bit of reasoning here?
No, because I take the view that those who cover their faces are showing disrespect to everyone else, and we simply can't have a society where certain individuals decide that they're better than everybody else and no one dare look at them, and they can go around with their face covered. I mean, it's basic common sense courtesy and decency to show your face when you're going to a parents' evening, as in this case, and the school was quite right to say, no, you can't come in if you're going to wear that. Imagine if a male parent had turned up wearing a full-face balaclava and expected to engage in a sensible way with the teaching staff to discuss their offspring's education. It would be completely absurd. And at the end of the day, this is the United Kingdom. It's not Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. And if people want to go around with their faces covered, there are lots of other countries in the world where they can do that. And I'm delighted that this college has taken a stand against someone who decides to cover their face. It's completely unacceptable for people to do that in Britain in the 21st century.
It's completely unacceptable for people to do this in the 21st century. They should be showing more respect. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think having listened to what you said, Mr. Holborn, is that you said it was common sense and decency. You know, I think what we have to recognise here is that everyone's thinking eventually does evolve, and, you know, decency, well, you know, we have to look at the context of it. Obviously, decency could involve someone coming into the college, revealing a lot of their body parts, or, you know, it's what becomes offensive. And, you know, I'm British, and I believe that you have to, not get your own personal opinions mixed up with what is right and wrong. In place we have equal opportunities. I believe that part of equal opportunities, policies and procedures, means that she should have been able to practice them rights, and security should have obviously identified her, and then that was it.
But a lot of people may argue, Shalina Litt, that we can't have one rule for one person or one rule for one small group of people and have another rule for the rest of the people visiting that particular college. Surely if it is a rule, it has to be adhered to, does it not?
Exactly. I mean, I think, like I said, we have to define it in context. I think, Mr. Holobone, you compare wearing a balaclava to, somebody covering their face. Both are taken out of context. I think you have to be careful of what you say in reference to your position. I'm quite astonished. I don't mean to be disrespectful in this sense, but I'm quite astonished that you would say that, considering your position. You're in the police force, you're working with the government. You have to have professional decorum and observe equal opportunities. And yes, of course we must have British values, but you're imposing on what people want to do, how they want to dress, and you're confusing it. And it's cleverly done, but let's not get them mixed up.
Mr. Holobone, is this a breach of somebody's freedom? Surely in a free, democratic country where people are allowed to express themselves or wear whatever attire they wish as long as it's not offending anybody, surely people have the right to do that. Don't we move into dangerous territory where we start dictating to people what they can wear and what they can't wear?
Well, I actually find it offensive for people covering their face. I think it's rude. I think it's disrespectful and discourteous, and I just cannot for the life of me understand how someone who covers their face can expect to have a sensible conversation with anyone else. Other countries around the world are concerned about this, and increasingly you're finding countries legislating, because it's part of the unwritten code of our daily lives that whether you know somebody or not, if you're passing them in the street or meeting them on an occasion, that you see someone's face. And when you can't see somebody's face, that doesn't feel right. And what I would say is that those who are covering their face basically feel that they're better than everybody else, that no one has a right to gaze upon them. And it's just not acceptable behaviour.
But surely,
and
Mr.
if the
Holobone,
parent concerned was really interested in their child's education, what they would have done is said, okay, I understand the college's rules on this, I'm not going to cover my face on this occasion. That would have been the sensible way to
But the lady did respond to them like that. What she was saying, it was how they went about it, you see. She was prepared to lift her veil. And I think that's important. We don't ignore that fact. It was how they addressed it.
Well, extremely generous of her to offer to lift her veil so they could check her identity. And then she was going to put the veil back on and expect to have a normal conversation with the teachers. Well, I'm afraid
again,
the world doesn't work like that.
Again,
I think a lot of commentators, and especially the lady in question herself, actually said that she had visited the school or college on 2 previous occasions where her wearing her niqab, her full face veil, hadn't actually been a problem. I think another issue that I would like to explore here, Mr. Holobone, is this idea of the fact that perhaps somebody wearing a balaclava would be wearing the balaclava for a very different reason for why somebody would wear a niqab. Obviously, a niqab being a full face veil, a lot of Muslim women like to wear it as part of their faith. Do you think that actually when we start to say to people who choose to wear the niqab that they're not permitted to do so, aren't we then brinking on this idea of preventing people from practicing their faith, their religion in the United Kingdom, in a country where we pride ourselves on actually being able to practice our faith freely?
Well, let's knock this on the head straight away. Covering your face is not a religious requirement in the Islamic faith. The Islamic faith requirement is that women should dress modestly. There is absolutely no requirement at all anywhere that women have to cover their face. So it's not a religious requirement. second thing to say is that it is already actually illegal for a teacher to wear a niqab or a full face veil in this country. So a precedent has already been set. And especially with this parents' evening taking place in an educational environment, I would have hoped that the woman in question would have been far more sensitive to the existing status of niqabs within schools and colleges.
You see, Shalina, this is what I'm, what I find really concerning here is that, you're putting your energy into an area that is affecting Britain, that doesn't affect us as British people. How many people, and you work in the police force yourself, how many people are actually committing crimes? Are these women that cover their faces committing crimes? No, they're not. You're talking about addressing something because people are feeling uncomfortable. I think, feeling more uncomfortable is less more important than me knowing that you're not providing or giving your service to, addressing things that are really affecting the community as British people. That's what I think our, values should be as British people. And that's where me and you are on the same page, Mr. Holobone. I'm British, you're British. And what you're doing is you're bringing your personal opinion and you're abusing your position by doing that. You're in a position where you can put forward a bill. But I think you have to define what is your role.
However, Shalina Litt, this idea of compromise and being reasonable, meeting somebody halfway, what do you say to those people who actually say that the niqab prevents things like communication? You've got people like Mr. Holobone here actually saying that if somebody's wearing the niqab, it's very hard to see their face and therefore very hard to communicate with them. And also this idea of the fact that in this specific situation we were talking about security. Do you think that security would have been attained even if the lady was initially identified and then allowed to go through a very large college with a niqab on where people perhaps could not identify her?
Yeah, I think, when you come down to basics, it's contextual. I mean, I can only speak of my own opinion. I cover my face. When I'm in a location, that permits me to lift my veil, then I will do so. It's my choice. And I think that these ethics that you speak about are intervening with my rights as a woman. And I think it's unfortunately, it gets quite messy, and we have to clearly define what is influencing a group of people, and a very small group of people, may I add, because the bill I understand that you put forward, it was rejected. So I'm very glad to hear that, because, I value the fact that I can still wear my niqab. In terms of social security, there are measures that need to be taken, yes, but they are in place.
Mr. Holobone, going back to the time where you did run a PMB through Parliament, the then Immigration Minister and current Immigration Minister, I understand, Damien Green, described banning the niqab as, quote, un-British, unquote. Why do you think that, if in your opinion the niqab is so backward and not acceptable in British society, again in your opinion, hasn't it actually got wide support from members of Parliament, even of your own same party? Why are people actually opposing your view quite strongly?
Well, I think the correct context of this is that there is overwhelming support in this country for legislation to ban face coverings. That is not reflected in the British Parliament because a lot of politicians, frankly, are frightened of the reaction from some of the more volatile members of the Islamic community. That's why the legislation hasn't made any progress. The law has gone through in France. It's now with the European Court of Human Rights. If it succeeds in getting through the European Court, that would be the opportunity to try again in this country.
But surely...
But what I don't want is a Britain where you walk down a typical British high street and you see lots of women with their faces covered. That is not my vision of the United Kingdom. And the reason I don't want that is because we will never get sensible community cohesion if people go around covering their faces. Now, recently I went down Whitechapel High Street in London. There's lots of women there covering their faces. I didn't see those women speaking to other members of the public. I only saw those women speaking to other women wearing the niqab or the burqa. And we have in this country far too many immigrant Islamic women who don't speak English and who will never speak English because they never speak with English people.
However,
and they are behind the veil and they cannot communicate in a sensible way.
However,
and other people won't communicate with them. No, I don't want Britain to be like that. And I think the vast majority of people in this country, the vast majority of your listeners, don't like this idea that people should be able to cover their faces. It's fine in Islamic countries if that's what they want to do, but it's not the vision I have for this country.
May I say, Mr. Holobone, and how would you feel about walking down a high street and seeing women and men walking half naked? Are you comfortable with that?
No, I don't like that. And to give you an example, I mean, say there was a woman walking down a high street in Pakistan wearing a short skirt. I know that there would be lots of hostility.
I'm glad that you bring that up.
To a woman doing that.
Yeah, that's good that you bring it up because we have something in common, Mr. Holobone.
In Pakistan should be far more sensitive to the way in which local people would regard her dress. And the same rule should apply in this country. Those who cover their faces should realise the offence it is causing people in this country who regard it as completely alien to the way in which we wish to live our lives.
However, Mr. Holobone, isn't it slightly a very dangerous generalisation to suggest that women who choose to wear the full face veil are somehow, in your opinion, for the most part, socially excluded, where we have guests here on this panel, like Shalina Litt here, who very much plays a key role in the community, socialises quite a lot, as I understand, who actually does wear a niqab. Isn't that a slightly ill-informed, dangerous generalisation on your part there, Mr. Holobone?
Well, I'm sure she's the exception that proves the rule, because there are lots of women who do wear the full face veil who, frankly, sadly, are not engaged in the local community and who don't speak English.
See, this is my position. Okay, we've both been here. You was born in Britain, yeah, Mr. Holobone?
I was born in Britain, yes.
Yes, okay, me too. And I remember, and I can see how the values in Britain are evolving. Now, I'm sure if you was to ask, some of your elder family members about modesty, the older generation, they had that decorum of modesty. Even the term courting has gone to another level. So that's something that we're all in agreement on. And yes, I do go out there, I do community work, and I think it's a misconception, you see, that Islam comes with immigrants. It doesn't. And I'm telling you, Mr. Holobone, if you'd have told me I was going to be dressed the way that I'm dressed now, then I would have laughed at you, because it really just wasn't somewhere on my agenda. Islam is a spiritual journey, and this is why I'm saying it's a shame, because I understand you have a daughter, you have females around you. Islam could walk into their lives spiritually, and I really believe that what you've done is you've gone out there on a platform, and you're not prepared to broaden your understanding. And until you're ready to broaden your understanding, you're dangerously on grounds of continuing to impose your personal opinion, which I think is very neglectful of your duty, not only in the police force, but as a member of Parliament. And I think it's a big concern.
However, Shalina Litt, don't you think that at times, would you say that people who wear the niqab, like yourself, are you willing to compromise, or are you a group of very robust individuals that very much insist at all times that you have to have your niqab on? What is the position there? Because I think a lot of people like Mr. Holobone are very much saying that are you a group of people that don't show any compromise, are always there with your face covered up?
No, I see it as an opportunity to cover my face, and this is what I love about Britain, and I love to say I am British because I can walk around and choose to cover my face. If I'm in an area, for example, I go and visit my neighbour, Mr. Holobone, because as a Muslim, that's one of my duties. And, she's an old white lady. When I go there, I lift my veil. If I was to do it with an old gentleman, I would do it. It's contextual. And I think, what you're doing, is clever. And I commend you. If you're successful with it, you're successful with it. But clearly, up until now, you're not, but contextually, yes, depending on the area, yes, around children, I would. Why? Because there's no need for me to cover my face, but as an opportunity, I'll take advantage of it. You know, spiritually, that's pleasing to me. And, you know, if you're okay with you know, oppressing me spiritually, Mr. Holobone, then continue doing what you do, because you're oppressing a lot of women's rights to do something that they wish to, that they've made a choice to do.
Well, I would put it the other way round. I mean, I'm delighted that you're prepared to show respect to your elderly neighbour and to children. And what I would say to you is that you're not showing that respect to everyone else when you go about with your covered. What I'm trying to say to you is, okay, you might feel the need to cover your face, but the knock-on effect of that decision is to alienate everyone else, because it is regarded in this country as a discourtesy not to show your
but you
face.
see, it comes into necessity. You see, if you look at your crime statistics, I'm sure you'd see that rape in the Muslim community is, you know, far and few. Why? Because of the wisdom that comes from the religion. So I'm saying it's unfair for you to continue making this and taking this strong stance, because you don't have the broadened understanding of Islam. You're not, you know, if you're not interested in Islam, then you're not going to have that broadened understanding in Islam.
A question.
But what I think you should have that broadened understanding in is your role in the police force and your role as an MP to improve Britain.
A question that I think a lot of people would like to ask Mr. Holobone is the fact that if women who do wear the niqab are prepared to be reasonable, to show compromise, as Shalina here has described, the fact that when she's in certain company where she's comfortable, she does feel as though she can remove her full face veil. Does that therefore change your perspective on the subject? Does it therefore become more acceptable to you because these women are prepared to show compromise? So surely, if it's not a robust thing that they do, that they simply do not compromise on, isn't it slightly more of an acceptable thing to take place in this country for people to wear a full face veil?
The vast majority of people in this country regard it as completely unreasonable that anyone should cover their face.
But surely, Mr. Holobone, if the vast majority of the people in this country held that view, then members of Parliament, your colleagues of all parties that sit with you in the House of Commons, surely they would have been more than prepared to support your private member's bill and to support any other motion that's gone through the House of this particular nature if the vast majority of people were on their side. Surely that means more votes, more of a chance of them being re-elected to the Commons.
Well, that may well have been the case, but the law that I drafted never got debated. It never had parliamentary time, so it hasn't been rejected.
But clearly it didn't have time because they didn't see the value in Parliament, thank God. They would have made time if they seen value in it. So, you know, at the moment, and I'm thankful to God, and, you know, I understand you do have Christian values. So for me, you know, you won't be successful until God aids you to be successful, and it will be for a reason. But, you know, I'm just saying, you're putting your energy in something that we don't need. In Britain, you need to be concentrating on the problems that we have. Yeah, there are immigration problems. You know, I don't understand why you're, you know, investing so much energy in something that you have no broadened understanding of. Clearly, it's personal.
We are running out of time, but if I could take a concluding comment from yourself, Mr. Holobone. This incident has, of course, taken place in Manchester. This mother being refused entry to her son's college, although she does argue that she was prepared to compromise. How do you think, in your opinion, this debate will unfold? Do you think that the niqab will eventually become a banned entity in this country?
People going around covering their faces is completely unreasonable, and that's the view of the vast majority of people in this country. It is not a religious requirement of Islam for women to cover their faces, and we're never going to have a cohesive and fully integrated modern society in Britain if we allow people to cover their faces. It shows a basic lack of courtesy and respect for women to go around with their faces covered. We wouldn't have men going around with their faces covered with balaclavas, and we shouldn't allow women to go around with their faces covered with a niqab or the burqa.
Although, as a point of impartiality, some people may state that Islam encourages women to attain their modesty, to dress in a way that they feel comfortable, and some may feel as though that is not just wearing a hijab but also wearing a niqab, which of course is the full face veil. Concluding comments from yourself, Shalina Litt, please.
Just really on reflection of what Mr. Holobone said, that the vast majority of people in your understanding oppose this. Well, there are a vast majority, including yourself, as I asked you earlier, that don't agree with women or men walking down the road half naked. So does that mean that you're going to invest your energies at opposing this? I don't think so. I believe that your role, your job description, your policies and procedures of your Conservative Party, confine you to doing things that are going to do good by Britain. And that's what you should be investing your energy into, not something that really only has goodness in this community. I'm a Muslim woman. I will check on my neighbours. I will do right by anyone who has rights over me, including yourself. And I do hope I'm not offended you today, Mr. Holobone. I've just stated my position on something that I do find personal to myself.
Okay, Phillip Holobone, Member of Parliament for Kettering, Conservative Member of Parliament for Kettering, and Shalina Litt, thank you both very much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.